Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Mystic Games. Today we're going to be talking Dicefolk again, and we're going to be doing the Warrior Talisman. So I did an overall Chimera list for like all the base game Chimera, which was like 2 hours long. We're going to do a Chimera list on just the Warrior Talisman. Talismans restrict the Chimera that you can get. So all the Chimera that are in D tier right here are the Chimera that you have access to. I'm just going to go through anybody that might be trying to run the Warrior Talisman, and as they pull Chimera, they're wondering which ones out of the actual Talisman would be, I think good. My list before is if you can have any Chimera from anywhere on any team, that's my ranking. So this might be slightly different, but they're probably going to still rate high if they rated high there. I'm not going to promise the same spot, but I'm going to put them probably pretty high. We're going to go in the order of the Warrior Talisman and start right from the bottom with a Mariluka going all the way down to, I want to say it's Gorsalot. So let's jump right into it, because we already kind of, if you watch my other two videos, you kind of have an idea. So Amarlock is a frontline. This is the one that you're going to be using as probably one of your main attackers. I do think it's an A tier Chimera. Iridescent is probably S or high A. If you can get items to increase its luck chance, it becomes even better. But I would say it's slightly above average, because of the chance to attack multiple times is extremely solid. Next we have Armantis. Now Armantis attacks the enemy team after they run out of dice, and it hits the opposing leader. I'm going to put it in B for now. This is more of a support. You'll use like him in the front line as your leader slot. This would be sitting in your back line. The Warrior Talisman doesn't require a lot of rotation. It isn't necessary. So you're going to want normally a frontliner to be a leader, and then you're going to want a backliner support, and then probably another backliner support, or a secondary attacker leader slot that can kind of be funneled out, so you can have one or two leaders, and then you kind of have one that just is a supporter. Or if you're, if you get lucky enough, you can have one leader and then two supports. But they don't have access to like healing like the others do, so their supports are more for damage and less for healing and stuff, which means they have limited support capabilities. Anyways, I'm going to put Armantis in B. I think he's solid. Your opponent will always use all their dice. They have to. So then he just gets a free hit. Armandoro, which is the bird here, whenever this enters lead in rotation, it attacks. This is like a mix between a support and a frontliner, because you rotate it into lead. It deals damage, and then you would probably attack with it again. But it doesn't do... It's not good at either job. I would say it's a B tier, and I shouldn't say it's not good. It's okay at what it does. It has its purpose, but it is like essentially a support attacker, which is a weird position to be in with the Warrior dice. Normally you're not going to really want to move your leadership around as much in the Warrior Talisman as I'm saying, so having a rotation isn't super necessary. I actually would say in this, it could actually be, I almost could consider this a C, but I'm going to put it in B for now. We might make it lower as I start putting more stuff in the list. Wasai, he counterattacks. He's S tier for this talisman. He's probably one of the best Chimera for this talisman. And the iridescent version just gets better. He gets like a shield every 3 turns, which means he just blocks damage and then counters for free. He's really good. Every time they hit you, he attacks back. There's not much more to say. He's pretty simple. This is another support Chimera. So what this does is at the end of its turn, it will hit a enemy if it's not in leadership slot. So this is like, again, you could pair this with, like, we'll say you have Wasai in your leader slot. You have him in the back line and him in the back line, and you just try to keep him there without having to move him out. These two will just do additional damage either way. They're both solid for the Warrior Talisman. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're good. I will say that I think he's better than Karaskull is, because Karaskull requires that you are not in the leadership slot, and there are times where things could go wrong and he might get moved into the leader slot, which then makes him useless, whereas he's always going to hit because of no opponent dice, our little praying mantis guy. So that's my idea here. Do think he's still B tier, though. He's pretty good. Bion Furry is on allied strength gain, you attack. He's a support. He can be B tier, and he can actually be better than both of these guys, but until you get dice or things that buff you up on your team, like for strength, he's C tier. And there is nothing else in the Warrior Talisman specifically that buffs strength, so for this talisman in general, he's probably C tier, unless you get really lucky and you're able to get quite a few either mirrors or bulk ups for your dice, and then he could probably be B tier. Maybe even A tier at that point. This is Escabel. He will, on enemy rotation, if he is not in the leadership position, he will attack the opposing leader. He's like a better version of Carousel. He sits in the back line and he hits the enemy for some additional damage. There is some level of variance with him, though, due to the fact that you need to rotate the enemy team, which again, because these guys have variance in location and how the enemy team like configure, he's still better. Glavictas attacks once as long as you attack. The issue is his damage is so low. They actually decreased his damage, which I wish they didn't do. I think he was fine. The issue is because his damage is so low, I'd probably put him in C, as much as I want to put him in B. If you get the iridescent version, he attacks over and over, and if you have somebody like him who's countering, he just attacks a ton. And then if you have somebody like him who attacks multiple times, or him who attacks multiple times, he attacks a ton, but it needs to be iridescent. And we're looking at just the standard version. I'm going to put him in front of Bion Fury because he generally will be more efficient, but he just deals so little damage, it's just not really that great. I'm going to put Lycanus in A, but not as an attacker. I'm putting him in as a supporter. Pretty much, as long as he is damaged, he attacks the opposing leader at the start of every turn. And he has solid damage. Pretty much what you do is you put him into a... You normally will move him into the leader slot, let him get hit once, take very minimal damage, and then move him into the back line, and then he'll just attack the enemy team, which just gives you extra damage every turn. The only downside to him is that you need to upgrade his attack to make sure he scales so that he is useful. But he is one of these guys that will always work, and because it's at the start of the turn, I think it's better than the end of the turn, which is what the Praying Mantis does, and the Praying Mantis is also just weaker attack-wise than Lycanus is. I think Lycanus is the superior support for the Warrior dice compared to a lot of the others. Akama attacks, and then attacks again. The iridescent version hits everybody, so that's pretty awesome. I'm actually going to put him in S as well. Just getting an additional attack per turn is really good. He'd be a little nicer if he had like one more damage to start. But this is one of the solid attacking slot Chimera. I think Wasai is actually the best for the Warrior dice for the attack slot. But I believe Akama is generally going to be second, and then you're probably going to be looking at the whale dog looking creature here as the third one, unless you get the iridescent version. I actually think if you look at like iridescence, it's probably this, then a comma, and then Wasai. But normal versions, this is probably the order that you're going to want to put them in leadership. Next is Metoposcorillus. It's the whale hair. Pretty much he just gets a spell that he clashes with the opponent and deals his damage. He's a fine support. I'm going to put him in B. I'm actually going to put him in the middle because he has to take damage to give out damage, and that's not always the best, but it is controllable damage. So you can control when he strikes and when he does not strike, which is useful. Cactal is a support. It gives thorns when you attack. It is affected by int. I'm going to put it in lower C. I don't think this is very good. Thorns is reactive. Reactive abilities tend to be weaker. It doesn't work super well here unless you're using like a Kama or a Merilluca, because then you get multiple attacks. Potentially with Sai you might get multiple attacks too and you can make it work. But you need a good strong leader slot Chimera for this to really be effective. Say you get something else that you have to put in lead temporarily until you start getting these 3 options. As of right now, those are kind of our 3 attacker options, and that would actually help proc this effectively. So, very, very situational. Really needs essentially these 3 Chimera that I put in S and A to really be functional to even work, and then even that, Thorns is just kind of weak. Next is Zeltovis, which is the, I don't know, we'll call it a ram. It's kind of what it looks like. When an ally attacks, it has a chance of gaining 2 strength for the rest of the turn. It's only a 50% chance. It's only for the turn, so this is pretty weak. It's also when the ally attacks, so you want to attack, then rotate this in, and then hopefully be able to attack again. Super situational. Until you get more dice, the thing is not that great. It's also supposed to be like a leadership, so this is going to be a B tier leadership. It doesn't just work on its own, it requires setup, and it's not even meant for the leadership slot, it's meant for like a rotation. This would kind of work well with the bird here, because you would rotate these 2 in and out of the leadership slot, and essentially that's how you would probably work. The problem with that is you need to have 2 rotations per turn to actually make this work properly, and generally you're going to have 1 rotation dice with Warrior unless you make another rotation dice, which is generally not going to be as effective as making attack dice with the Warrior dice. So it's a weird situation because a lot of the Chimera in this setup are meant to not really move around, and these 2 are made to move around. So together these 2 are actually a decent combo, but they're not what I would consider like prime or super capable. They're very situational, and you need to set them up. Corbatus, I think I actually put him in like S or A last time as a support. What he does is he attacks the opposing leader, and it's a spell. It's like a weaker version of Lycanis, so I'm going to put it behind Lycanis, and you might be why is it weaker. Lycanis just does it as long as he's damaged. You need to cast a spell. It will eventually run out. The thing is, I don't think you will run out of this spell during any single combat. It does have 6 charges. But it's essentially the same as Lycanis. It's a little bit weaker, but has more health than Lycanis. But it does essentially the same job. It's just you can choose when you use it. For control purposes, it's better because you can control it. But they're very equivalent. I would say he is probably behind Lycanis in general. Wargoyle. The ally leader attacks the opposing leader. I actually think this is a fantastic support, and I put this in S, and I'm still going to put it there. It gets 5 charges to help your leader attack again. Things like, a Kama and a Mariluk that attack multiple times just gives them another chance to proc their additional attacks. So it's just a really good Chimera for this build because, as I said, you really don't want to move out your leadership slots. So having something like this will allow the leader to attack more without getting additional dice. Just a free attack every turn for the leader, which is generally where you're going to want to stack your strength. Polymine is the construct here. He does his damage to all opponents on spawn, and he does it once. I actually put him pretty high because it's an AoE strike. The issue with Polymine on its actual dice is I would actually put him in probably B, upper B, but I would put him in B tier now. Attacking all the opponents for 7 damage is fine, but then you're probably not going to use him. He's essentially a backup. So if you're using something like this where you're going to rotate in and out with these two, he might be involved in that team just because he's a solid attacker on his own. But again, that's not probably an optimal team. That's something you're going to use if that's what you get. Still good. I just think that there are better options for support, and those are listed above. So then we have the Hippo Rhinoceros Rhydon creature here. He's next. What he does is he attacks all opponents after 4 ally attacks. His damage is pretty low. And it requires 4 ally attacks. Which again, this works really well with the people up in S tier for leadership slots. But if you don't have them, it makes him weaker. If you do have them, he can be very strong. He could probably be A tier, honestly, because he could probably output more damage than everyone else. But because he is not guaranteed to have additional attackers, we're going to put him in lower B, or I'm sorry, not lower B, but upper B, but behind the one that gets a free strike on everybody. I think he's like a worse version. But he is really solid, especially with Amaraluk and like Lucky. If you get this, you're pretty doing solid because he's going to just get a ton of attacks off. And it's going to AoE on top of his attacks. And last but not least is our legendary Gorsalot. So he has the spell, he attacks all opponents once. He's essentially a better version of this. The only issue is he has pretty low attack. We're going to put him here. I'm actually going to put him up here because he AoEs everybody. If you get a few attack points on him, he becomes like a better version of this because you can control it. And then you can also stack strength on him, and you can do it multiple times. So he's going to overall deal out more damage than he would deal out. But yeah, that's my Warrior Talisman tier list. I wanted to do separate tier lists for you guys for each Talisman. I'm probably going to skip Storm. I haven't... Well, actually, I shouldn't say I'm going to skip Storm. I'll probably do Storm next. Storm is next, I believe. I've already done Wills because I went backwards. I'm looking at the Talismans right now on my other screen. Yeah, it's Storm, which I'm a big fan of Warrior. I'm a big fan of Wrath. Those are my 2 favorites to play with. I also like the new DLC, which I did a tier list on. Pain, I don't like... Well, I shouldn't say I don't like Pain. I don't like a lot of the Chimera in Pain because of what they do, but there are a few actually really nice solid sleepers in there. And Storm is very interesting, but it requires a lot of rotation. And the reason I like Wrath and Warrior is I can build up a leader and then have support slots and then generally win that way, and it's pretty like consistent. Like I normally can clear the run, whereas when I have to rotate a lot, sometimes that becomes a problem. And that's what Storm's all about. Anyways, guys, we'll talk about Storm in the next one a little more. I hope this helps you guys when you're doing the Warrior run-through to kind of look at what you should be picking. Please listen to my suggestions on the tier list. I hope you guys, if you're clicking at the end, because this is where this will be, you actually listen to each Chimera, because I do leadership slot and then I do support slot, and I think that's extremely important to understand, because if you pick S tier, you're going to have 1 support and 2 attackers, and you would be actually hurting yourselves because you don't have enough support. So I seriously hope everybody watched from the beginning just so they understand that. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll catch you in the next one. See you guys later. Bye.